Well, hello everyone. I hope this finds you well. Wherever this finds you, make sure to jump on to Family First Facebook or YouTube channel if you want to send me a message and let me know, first and foremost, that you're there, where you are, both in New Zealand and around the world. And also to make sure that the sound and everything is working, because you know me. Philippa, lovely, you are the first, you're a winner. I'm just going to be bringing the sound down a bit because I think I'm quite loud. There we go. Look, first and foremost, so Philippa's the winner. She's the first to comment today. There we go. So good morning. Obviously, everyone, if you're joining me this morning here on Solid Ground, welcome, welcome, welcome. Basically, we talk the politics, the culture, the social issues of the day. And also we do it from a good foundation. A solid ground, if you will, but always a little bit of a joke that, of course, it relates to coffee. We have Chris here as well. Lovely to have you with me. I'm assuming you guys can hear me, because if you are a common or a regular, rather, follower, you'll know that I often get that wrong. So we've got lovely Amanda there in the wire wrapper. Just going through here, we've got Rosie there in wonderful Taupo. Got Jackie here in Raitihi. Excuse me, I'm actually watching this, I'm not watching. The comments come in a very small font, but I think I've said that right. Raitihi there in the central North Island. Got Carol, good morning. To Ian, good morning. Lovely to have you guys with me. So any of you who are joining me, this goes across multiple platforms, but if you want your comments to come live, as you can see Ian's there, jump on to Family First Facebook page or Family First YouTube channel. Those comments come directly to me here. If you're on my LinkedIn, for example, or my Simon O'Connor Facebook page, it won't come here directly. But look, there's a ton of stuff to talk about today. But you can see that, once again, I'm not quite in the usual location. This is not the usual solid ground background, and it's not the same as last week. And so just to give you a hint of where I am, I'm just going to say bienvenue sur la terre ferme. Bienvenue sur la terre ferme. And if you're still not quite sure where I am, I'm going to share this with you, because literally it's about 100 meters to my right. So where am I? Clearly, I'm in Paris. What an amazing place to be. So, of course, bienvenue, welcome, sur la terre ferme, to solid ground. I've been trying out my best French over here. I've not yet made a complete disaster of it. And if you're wondering what that last video was, that's Notre Dame de Paris, Our Lady of Paris, that amazing cathedral that's over 1,000, well, almost 1,000 years old, and of course, tragically, had that massive fire a few years ago. So one of the things I wanted to do while being here in Europe was to go and see it. Because amongst other things, they've cleaned the cathedral. So we're so used to seeing these great rock stone monuments, if you will, dark and grey. That's standard, because literally hundreds and hundreds of years of dirt and soot. But because of the fire here at Notre Dame, they've cleaned it all, and I just have to say it was just an incredible experience today to be going through and just looking at it restored, but just the stones gleaming. So it was a real treat. So that was just a video from literally about an hour ago. So the hotel room, I can't show you easily, but literally if I look out these windows, and you can see one behind me with the curtains, it's about 100 meters away. So it's a real gem. So yeah, and thank you, Rosie. Ratahi, how did I know? I know Ratahi. I didn't realize that's how it was spelt. There you go. So to Jackie, lovely to have you here from lovely Ratahi. So as I say, Rach and I are still traveling. We've done some other things. Obviously, we were in Ireland. Some of you who know things geographical will know exactly where this is in Ireland, and you're very welcome to comment and suggest where. That was an amazing experience, albeit, excuse me, a little bit cold. And then also, I don't know why there's a bit of an ecclesiastical or church theme today, but this is called Muckross Abbey. It's an old, I think, Augustinian abbey in County Kerry. And that's what the stone around it's called the cloister. It's where the monks would walk in a square, but in the middle is this beautiful tree growing. I just found it quite beautiful. So anyway, there's a couple of pics I'm sharing with you on the trip. So it's been wonderful so far, absolutely loving it. But Solid Ground is not about telling you per se about where I'm traveling, other than to say it's formidable. It's been wonderful. The trip has been absolutely incredible. But there's clearly a lot being... I have to laugh. No, I caught up actually a lovely nun in a city that's a bit indulgent, a place called Bantry. It's actually where my grandfather lived, and so I bumped into a lovely Catholic nun there. She's actually a Mercy sister, so we had a little bit of a chat. So that was quite a treat. But obviously, look, there's a lot going on in the world, and mostly Solid Ground deals with local issues. But this one popping up, this has been all over social media, all over commentary the last few days, and that's obviously the discussion, if you can even call it that, between Zelensky and Trump. All I would say, well, actually, there's so much that can be said. And like anything in foreign affairs, there's lots of nuance. But at the end of the day, I posted about it the other day, and I've seen a whole lot of comments, although I haven't really got to them all fully. At the end of the day, I thought it was actually a pretty terrible performance. And that was more the style rather than the substance. And what I mean by that, I think there are actually a number of reasons to have good, robust discussions between America and Ukraine, or in this case, between Zelensky and Trump. Both are performers, and they were both on stage. But the key thing for me is that actually when it comes to foreign affairs, when it comes to diplomacy, the best robust conversations are had off camera. Now, I don't genuinely know what's happened. I've had some people suggest to me this was very much an ambush from Trump and Vance, but I've actually had other geopolitical commentators, including in New Zealand, saying it was Zelensky poking the bear. But all I can say is that the war is not going to be solved by big egos, big demonstrations of emotion like this. I think actually it's quite damaging. But, fundamentally, to be really, really simple about it, the war has to end. And on that front, I think Trump is actually quite correct. What's happening in Ukraine is just a meat grinder. In fact, it's something I've talked about before here on Solid Ground, on Straight Talk and elsewhere. It's just a meat grinder. And that's part of sort of Russians' military doctrine action. They just keep going and going and going. It's what the Russians did to the Germans, obviously what they did to the French, Napoleon and others. They're just going to do the same to the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainians are holding the line at the moment because of American and European money and certainly US weapons. And clearly, Trump's had enough. He's had enough. And you know what? I can understand that. And I think it was Mike Hoskin actually yesterday said it's just common sense to say we just got to cut a deal. And as I understand it, the big sticking point, and you can understand it from the Ukrainian side, is they want security guarantees. There's no point of a ceasefire and then find that 4 or 5 years from now Russia just pushes on again, because that's what they've already done, by the way. That's what they've already done. They took Crimea, then the Donbass. They just keep pushing little bit by little bit, sort of bite and hold. Another classic strategy. And actually, Simply Green's nailed it. If I can find the right buttons, there we go. Yeah, they'll just take a little bit at a time. Hence why Zelensky wants some greater security guarantees. But Trump, of course, is tired of the war. He's tired of basically thousands dying a week, and he made it clear it doesn't matter if they're Russian or Ukrainian. They're still young human beings, young men primarily, and it's just costing a fortune. So again, from Trump's side, I understand, and he's not putting up again with the theatrics. I think Amanda, I'm just skimming at speed here, has nailed part of it. He tried to outplay Trump. Yeah, I think you had two sort of theatrical people, and it didn't work for Zelensky this time. But as I say, I just don't think it was edifying, the whole thing. I don't actually think it serves diplomacy very well at all. At all. And again, simply going, one of these days I'll politely work out who you are, good sir. But you've nailed it. You've absolutely nailed it. The natural state of the world is chaos, is disorder. And so we're lucky to live as we are in New Zealand in a time of peace. But I just thought it was interesting. But the next point that came out of it for me was that the dear old Europeans quickly held. By the way, good morning, Vanessa. Lovely to have you here too. Melanie, lovely to have you aboard. Lynette, lovely to have you here too from Christchurch. Interesting, a couple of days after the Trump meeting, the European leaders all got together, as you can see. And look, at one level, kudos, that's great. The problem is talk is cheap. Talk is very, very cheap. And let's be clear, the total European spend into Ukraine is about the same as the United States. So if you put all the European countries together, their military spend is actually, that's not quite true. Their military and humanitarian spend is almost the same as America. But country by country or state by state, the Americans are way out in front. So huge, huge spend. And I suppose the real simple point here is it's all well and good for Keir Starmer and all these others to get together and shake hands with Zelensky and give him a hug and talk a big game. But the Europeans have been doing this for 3 years now, and it's not enough. And one of the big contentions from the Americans, as you can understand, is why are they paying enormous amounts of money to prop up the Europeans who themselves are not spending enough in military matters. A lot of them are not even spending 2% of their GDP. And again, expecting that American umbrella. And under Trump, it's over. It's over. So look, fascinating foreign affairs. It does actually have a small relationship here to New Zealand, if I could segue, because as you'll know, we've had these CCP or Chinese communist vessels in New Zealand. As I pointed out the other day, there's no moral equivalence between these Chinese vessels being down here in the Tasman and the likes of New Zealand doing what they call their freedom of navigation operations, or FONOPs, in the Taiwan Strait. So in Taiwan Strait, it's a contested area. China's threatening to take Taiwan over. Australia's not threatening to take us over, or vice versa. When we do go through the Taiwan states, it's insisting on what is a major area of maritime commerce. The Tasman Sea is not. And the third point, for those who make that moral equivalence argument, New Zealand doesn't do live firing exercises. So this was a very deliberate exercise, timed to coincide with Winston Peters visiting China. It's really sending us a signal. And to be blunt with you guys, we just need to give them the giant middle finger. Because, I've been speaking out against Chinese aggression for a long time. But it seems that New Zealand politicians are only just waking up. And to be honest with you guys, I'm not convinced they have woken up. Because they're all talking a huge game at the moment, if I can find it, which of course I can't. Isn't that just typical? There we go. It doesn't really matter. But, we've got the government of the day making big talks. What does it says there? We cannot hide anymore, says the Minister of Defence. And Chris Luxon, Winston Peters, all these other guys are talking big. Well, first and foremost, they've had their heads in the sand. We've been warning about this for years. They've infiltrated our computer systems, set up police stations. There's been a whole lot of compromising of our Chinese community groups and others, like major issues. But our politicians across all parties, I better be clear, have stuck their head in the sand. So to someone like myself, who's been very involved in this area, I'm very skeptical, cynical of the politicians today speaking into this space as if they're surprised. They shouldn't be surprised, other than they've been deliberately ignorant beforehand. The second thing is now they're talking big about military spending in New Zealand. Well, at one level, I think that's good. New Zealand should be spending more. But let's just make this point. Where is the money coming from? New Zealand's not in good economic shape. National cut the defence budget last year. Okay, let's be under no illusions about that. They'll try to spin it, but they cut the military budget. Now they're talking big about increasing it. I'm not sure where they're going to find the money from, unless they're going to tax people more, and obviously they're looking to target charities. But this is my pick, guys. They will make huge announcements big announcements. But there'll be very little spending in behind it. It'll be a 15, 20-year plan to get us to 2% or whatever it is. So it's just something to watch. As I say, politicians will talk big, but I'm a little frustrated, as you might hear in my voice, because these guys have been deliberately ignorant, and some of them involved right now have been very deliberately ignorant over the years, poo-pooing a lot of what was happening, and now they supposedly wake up. And when it comes to military spending, have you noticed the government still hasn't answered why the HMNS Manawanui was put onto a reef? It's all gone quiet. So the military assets we do have, we tend to have a propensity to run onto reefs and sink. So, where are the answers? Where are the answers there? And the answers ain't going to come from this woman. I see dear old Helen Clark is once again opining. Well, basically, guys, if you haven't, I know this is all foreign affairs. I'll switch on to some more local and particular issues. But Helen Clark likes to opine, and she's welcome to do so. But she hates America. Let's be just blunt about that. She hates America, which is why she's always against whatever the American administration's doing. And now she wants us out of our intelligence gathering organization, which is just absurd. Just absurd. So, again, it's really just a passing comment of how she's actually been quite destructive. Bear in mind, this is a woman who has actively told us that responding to China and what it's been doing over the years is absurdism. She's criticized people like myself, Lewis Wall, and others for calling out Chinese infiltration into New Zealand. But now is like, oh. And you go, well, sorry, Helen. We now have Chinese warships off our shores, and you're still sitting there saying, well, let's downgrade our defense and intelligence capabilities. It's just exceptionally frustrating. Jumping to more local things, I don't know if you've been following this. The government suggesting, the New Zealand government that is, that we should move to a 4-year parliamentary term. Don't know what your opinions are. You're welcome to let me know. I sort of lean more towards saying it's okay, but this particular proposed piece of, I'm just going to put this up from, I can't quite read, excuse, I've got the font too low, but I can say it's an idiotic notion from Clark. Absolutely, it's idiotic. Downgrading our ability around intelligence is just absurd. But as I say at the start, she's basically anti. And Wanga Nalago makes a good point here. This is around funding to Ukraine. Look, this is one of the major questions that are, it doesn't matter if it's Americans in the UK, Ireland, I'm sure here in France, certainly in New Zealand. I mean, when you're spending millions, in the Americans' case, billions, into another country for a war that's going nowhere, is it a good investment? The answer is no. Anyway, the 4-year term, look, I've tended to lean towards this. I think Parliament does, believe it or not, need more time. 3 years goes by far too fast. And yes, I know people will say, oh my God, what about Jacinda? That's a fair point. But, just as there are bad examples, there are good examples. But I will say this bill isn't a particularly good way forward. I don't know what the government's thinking. I think it's part of an agreement with the ACT Party, so it may not go much further. This might be like the Treaty Principles Bill. National supports it into the House, but not any further. But why this bill is really weird, even though it says it's a 4-year term, it's actually decided by Parliament after each election. So you heard me right. Parliament will decide after each election whether to make it a 3 or a 4-year term. That's just bad, I was going to say governance. I think it's bad parliamentary process. The argument is that if the government's prepared to hand over a number of the select committees and the chairships of these select committees to the opposition, it should increase, the opposition's ability to critique what's happening, and therefore a 4-year term's okay, but it's excessively complex. I mean, either do 3 years or 4. No ifs, no buts. Simply Green again says he doesn't, or she, sorry, I'm making a terrible presumption there, is opposed, it's not radical enough. Is this Rosie says we're going to need more than 3 years? Yeah, I mean, this is the conundrum. I mean, to be fair, the government's not looking to introduce this next election. I think anyone who's going to introduce a change of electoral law is going to make sure that it's 2, 3, if not even 4 cycles away. So, yeah, not good. Jumping back into New Zealand, 2 very quick past topics that I referenced last week. We've had the Masterton fires, as you remember, multiple churches were targeted. I'm still struck how not one media outlet in New Zealand, or legacy media, has noted this as a hate crime. Now, as you know, I've got no time for hate crimes. In fact, I'm working on Family First submission at the moment to the Law Commission around introducing hate crimes. Shock horror, we oppose it. There's no need for hate crime legislation. But isn't it striking? If you walk on a rainbow crossing or you look at someone the wrong way, then all of a sudden that's a hate crime in New Zealand. But burning down churches, the media are not going to report it as that. It's all just been very straight down the line, which in many levels is great. But from a consistency point of view, I think it's quite striking. As I say, a guy, we've got his videos, we know his motivations, at least from what he said, but not one New Zealand reporter has taken the time to put it as hate speech. So I just thought that was interesting. And the other thing I mentioned last week too was, by being here in Europe, the real concerns around increasing violence here in Europe, and particularly from migrants. And literally a few minutes before I came online, this popped up onto my feed. So another car has run into a crowd of people in Germany. So last week there was a stabbing in Germany, and the day before in France. As I mentioned last week, it's happening almost every day, and I just wanted to put this back up because it just continues to happen. And the funny thing is, before they opened the borders, and I know this can be to some a controversial point, but Europe did not have cars ploughing into crowds of people. Nor did they have all these knife attacks. Europe has a problem at the moment, and it's been an imported problem. It's part of what we discussed at ARC. It's certainly something that's very present here. So we've been around Paris today. The amount of police, paramilitary, bollards up to try and protect the public. Absolutely necessary these days. But I just want to reinforce this to people, because if you are reading media in New Zealand, and great comment here, they are so biased and they are exceptionally woke, it's frustrating. If you read what's happening in Europe, you just think it's all these diabolical conservatives who are just, going crazy at migrants and others. Well, no. From what I can see, and granted, I've only been here a few weeks, there's genuine concerns. Whether they're right or wrong, you can debate that till the cows come home. But when you have people, we're talking to people from Sweden the other week. They now deal with bombs on a regular basis. They never had to. Their police aren't even used to it. They don't know what to do. As I say, knifings are quite regular now. People driving cars into people, again, almost all the time. It's the same set of people, and it's, as I keep saying, an imported problem. So anyway, all a bit heavy. Hey, look, a couple of last things. Here's something really stupid coming out of our school system, which is why we need to change the education system radically. Some principals are saying we need to scrap the NCEA tests because low-income schools, particularly in our Māori and Pacifica, is what they're saying, aren't doing well. And because they're not doing well, we need to scrap the tests so that we don't know who is and is not doing well, which doesn't seem like a particularly smart recipe. But yeah, as you say, as your headline says, literally these principals at schools want to scrap testing around maths. I should have noted that. Maths, reading, and was it English? No, science. Apologies. Science, mathematics, and English. They want to scrap the testing because they think it's going to victimize lower income families, particularly in the Māori and Pacifica communities. This is why our system is completely broken. Firstly, this is the bigotry of low expectation. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, you can do well. Secondly, what is wrong with these principals and teachers? In fact, why are they even in the profession? They're meant to be there to teach. It's in the name. But they don't seem to understand this. They're far too busy indoctrinating children. The whole point of teaching children is to get them to learn and understand. And from when they enter school to when they leave, you've got many, many, many years to do that. This is a complete failure, not of low incomes, but of teachers and these principals. In fact, that's where the light should be shone. Why is it that at these low-income schools, these principals and teachers are not competent enough to get the children to pass the likes of NCEA? And the last point I'd make, generally speaking, when you look at low-income areas, you have a breakdown a lot of the family and societal systems. Now, that's not the child's fault, but that's a consequence of a lot of the, progressive experiments that we've had in society. Maybe we should look at that rather than trying to mask the problems by not having any test result. Imagine it, being able to just turn up to a job and say, oh, look, I'm good at maths. I can't prove it to you. I've got no results. I mean, it's just absolutely terrible. But this is what's happening in our education space. And again, shame on those principals and the teachers in their school if they're supportive of this model. They're clearly failing, and they're all protected, by the way, by their teacher unions. Absolutely incompetent. And then this last little bit, then I've actually got a couple of, well, at least one nice story. This just popped up on my feed yesterday. This is in Dunedin, I believe. Long and short, this is about, political activism. I was struck, so they deliberately chose what looks like a Muslim girl wearing one of those scarves, a pro-Palestinian scarf, and they thought it was perfectly fine to run this bus safety ad. So first and foremost, I am for free speech. I mean, if that young girl, I'm not sure exactly what her age, but she certainly is a girl, wants to align herself with Hamas that murders babies and sends their remains home in terribly orchestrated, grotesque, Hamas-led parades, well, that's her right. Personally, I prefer we don't have those values in New Zealand. But what struck me is that the people behind the video were like, oh, no, this is free speech. This young girl, again, so young, I suspect, doesn't really know. But, it's free speech. She's allowed to do that. Well, let me just put this question. It's rhetorical, of course. But do you imagine if someone had turned up with something that said, I choose life on it, or biological sex is real? Do you think that those T-shirts would have been allowed into this video? It's rhetorical, but you all know the answer. The answer is not a chance. Not a chance. And so the key message from this is not the fact that this girl is supporting a death cult here in New Zealand. It's that the free speech argument from progressives only ever goes one way. They are more than happy to have, in this case, pro-Hamas messaging. But there is no way they would allow pro-free speech when it comes to life issues, when it comes to biology issues. Not a chance. As I say, had this girl or a young boy had a Choose Life t-shirt, not a chance. I was going to swear. I shouldn't. Not a chance. Speaking of not a chance, a really sad news story here, and something that New Zealand, Family First will be lobbying for, is this little boy and his father, New Zealander. I think his name is James. I'm sorry, don't have it all in front of me, but long and short, he's passed away. He was 5 years old. He needed palliative care in those dying weeks. And sadly, he didn't get any. And this is the tragedy here in New Zealand, is that we have a fully funded euthanasia system, not yet, I stress the word yet, for children. But we fully fund euthanasia, but we don't fund palliative care. Not fully, actually I better stress that, we don't fully fund it. And we only have very limited funding for the palliative care of children. In this case, he didn't get it, and it's very, very sad. And I'm sorry this is all a bit heavy today. I mean, so many of the issues that we touch on in Family First are. But I think it's cruel and it's wrong, immoral and unjust that a little boy like this and his family were not given that palliative support which they need. So it's something for this government to look at. I know Simeon Brown personally has a good heart. It's obviously always a big decision if you're going to spend money somewhere, where is it coming from? Which links back to our earlier discussion around defence. If somehow they're going to magic up the money, that's money that could be used elsewhere. I just think it's a sad, sad case. Anyway, I do want to end with something positive. It's only happened in recent hours. It's actually the winner of the Oscars for Best Supporting Actor. I think it's Kieran, I was going to say McAnulty. Oh my God, I've had a name blank. It's the brother who was McCulkin. There we go. It's the brother of Macaulay Culkin, Kieran McCulkin, who won Best Supporting Actor. And look, I don't give a tinker's cuss about the Oscars, but I thought the speech was quite wonderful. So I'm going to share it with you, and I think you'll see why.
But anyway, after the show, we're walking, stupidly publicly said that I want a third kid from her because she said if I won the award, she would give me the kid. It turns out she said that because she didn't think I was going to win. But and people came up to her and were like, really annoying her. I think it got to her. But anyway, after the show, we're walking through a parking lot. She's holding Emmy. We're trying to find our car. Emily, you were there, so you're a witness. And she goes, "Oh God, I did say that. I guess I owe you a third kid." And I turned to her and I said, "Really, I want 4. And she turned to me. I swear to God, this happened. It was just over a year ago. She said, "I will give you 4 when you win an Oscar." I held my hand out. She shook it, and I have not brought it up once until just now. You remember that, honey? You do? Okay. Then I just have this to say to you, Jazz. Love of my life, ye of little faith. No pressure. I love you. I'm really sorry I did this again. And let's get cracking on those kids. What do you say? I love you. I love you, Zizu and Booba. I love you, 52.
I hope you caught that. I just think it's actually quite sweet. Obviously, a man who loves his wife, but just so pro-family. They want 4 kids. I just thought it was actually endearing and to be at the Oscars and something a little bit positive to end the show with. Hey, look, a couple of last messages from me. You'll know that Bob and I both do what they call Substacks. So you can look mine up on Point. I did a video actually last week because I'm on the road. So I'm not able to easily write as I normally can. I will be going back to that. But I did a quick video sharing my impressions of ARC. That's the Alliance of Responsible Citizens, the event that Rachel and Bob went to. Bob himself does, well, not even a weekly. He's prolific. He's prolific. He does his Substack a couple of times every week, so check that out. Just look up McBlog. I've got my latest podcast out. I sit down with Roe Edge. We talk about women's sports. In particular, we talk about what's happening in America, the changes which are happening there, and consequently, what are the influences here in New Zealand. So lots and lots of content, guys, as you will know. Oh, I just see Debbie's put this up. I'm just checking out some of the comments now. I always get distracted. I thought he was very, very cute. I hope I have the name right. And Daria has it right. That was about the care that's not been given to the child in palliative care. Sad, really. God, brought us back to a sad topic. The Roe interview here is really, really good. Roe, as I say, is part of Women's in Sports Australasia. And we talk about all the changes in America and what has to happen here, particularly for safety and fairness, when a whole lot of biological men are turning up into women's sports. So lots to digest. You may have noticed Bob is doing a new show on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings called Daybreak. You can check that out. Straight Talk was last night. Political Playback is still going. It's on this week. I'm not there, of course. I'm traveling still for a little bit longer. So yeah, I shall leave it at that. Guys, thank you so much for joining me this morning here in Grand Paris. As I say, it's actually evening here. Notre Dame is just off to my right. I can see it lit up. To me, you can see it on my face. It's been an absolute gem and a pleasure. And Rachel and I it's just been stunning weather here. We've been absolutely blessed. But I look forward to joining you again next week on Solid Ground. Thank you so much for being part of the show. Thank you for all your comments and questions. I look forward to seeing you all next week.